in this sample I'm going to create a FF&E specification report and apply some formatting to it and use a different style sheet. So first thing I want to do is create a new XF template and save that one, and I'll just save it as and then I would like to assign a data source to it. I'll just use the standard FF&E sample XML included here, which is specification with images. And before I start to add any content, I would like to set the page layout. So I'll check the pagination under view, and the way this report is set up is that you can have one or more layouts which defines the header, footer, margins, etc., and then the pages using that layout. So to edit a layout, you just double click it, and then for example, in this example I'm going to make it A4. Okay, and then I'll rename it my content and add a dynamic page set, which means I'm going to now create a page set that for each item in the XML creates a page with layout my content. So I'll add the my content layout and say this should be used on all the pages, and for what part of the XML should we repeat. In this case we go to the article container and select article, so for each article. Okay, and here we can also set a sort. So I can add a sort for article container, and I'll sort by the article function number. Double click, OK. OK, and OK. And then I can remove this other. So I now have a dynamic page set with the content. So if I just, for example, now drag in the any information from the article, for instance the article name, and hit preview, I get one page for each article with information, which is the basis of my report. Okay, but in this case I'll also like to adjust the columns and the setup of the layout. So I'll double click the layout again, and you can see the different properties of this page layout. First you have the page format, but you can also specify the different regions. You have the body region, which is the content of the report. You have a left, a right, a header, and a footer. So in this case I'll make the right margin quite large, and I'll also make the top margin a bit bigger. And I can then go into the header, and I'll say that this should be 27 millimeters high, and I'll also set precedence, which means that the header would actually flow the entire page width. And I can also go into the right region, and in this case I'd like to first of all make it a bit wider and make it rotated 90 degrees. Okay, so that's the setup of the page content. Let's start to add some more data here instead. So we can now start to add the content of this report. I'll remove this one and instead insert a table. Make the first row flow both columns, and I can start drag and drop data. Let's say item colon and the name, and we can have one here, the unit price, and I can format that as currency. and we can have the responsibility. For example, and I'll just clear the formatting for the table, and if we preview, control page down, we have now some information. Go back to design mode, and I see I have no styles here, so I can use the style sheets, and I can assign the style sheet which is already included in the package. And I can start to use styles for this one. For example, give this the header style and this, and then I can add the specification itself. The way I would do this in this case is use the building blocks. I could build it from scratch, but we can also use building blocks. So I get the insert building block, and I'll browse for the folder where we have the building blocks and the FF&E Specification building block. Okay, if we now have a preview, you can see it looks like this. The styles of this, both the specification and the other, is defined in the style sheet. So I could go in and change that or use another style sheet. So the next thing I would like to do here is to add the images for the FF&E item. So I'll then press enter to create a new block, and I'll just drag and drop the picture field within and have a repeating inline repeat, because I would like to have something happen for each picture. And I'll clear this text and instead press insert image and click this small button here and dynamic value from XML and select image data. Okay, and we can then resize this a bit, perhaps make it a bit smaller. Now we're going to set some properties on this, because this will now automatically scale to the size of the image, but in this case I would only like to have a thumbnail size of perhaps 40 millimeters or 4 centimeters as a maximum width and a maximum height. So if we go to view and show properties, I can then alter this image. As you see now, it has a content width and content height. So instead of using that, we'll go to the positioning property and define the width and height. So width 40 millimeters, and then height also as 40 millimeters. And then if we go up to image again, we'll just make that content width scale to fit and content height scale to fit, and then head scaling, we'll keep that uniform. Okay, so if we now have a preview, control page down, we should start seeing images here. And if this item now had multiple images, they would be inline repeated, so to flow in the width of the content here. The next thing I would like to do is to add some information in the header, footer, and the right side. So I'll just close this down, and you can see the layout of the page. In order to edit the layout, we could either just double click on any of the content areas, or we could go to page layout, select edit page layout, and my content. Here the different layouts in your report would appear. So in the right side here, I would like to insert the FF&E number and name. If I just center align this and change the font, and we can insert field and like to have the core function number and the name. And as you can see, we now have that on the right hand side. I would like to make it gray in this case, so we only get the hint of the information. And also for the okay, and change this one to Calibri as well. Yes, double click to go out of it. So we now have some article information on the right hand side. Next we will insert the header, so double click on the header area, and this I'll build up using a table. So I create a table, and if I go to design, clear all formatting, and since we set the page layout, this should be flow the entire width of the page. I'll just use the first cell to align my content with the body area, and I'll insert an image, in this case a static URL from the desktop, and I'll click embed file, and on the right side here I would like to have the FF&E number, so I'll just type FF&E, and I'll again click the insert field, and make this some changes in the font and size. We can keep 12 but make it bold, and I can align it at the bottom right, and again align this with the content of the page. And then in this case here I'd like to insert the page number. I'll actually insert one more column to the right. Insert page number and make this big but gray, and underline, and I'll align that with the other information on the right, and we must align this with the body. So that was our header, so just double click to go out of it. So to create the footer, just scroll down to the footer area, and also in this case just double click, and I'll have my report, copyright my company, and I'll show you how to use the properties pane to do some formatting, because in this case I'd like to set some border on the block to have it gray border below. First I could just format the text, because if I did the underline on the text, it would only be underline for the text itself, but in this case I'd like to make it on the block. So yeah, I select the block down here, you can see it blue highlighted, and if we go down to borders and bottom, and I can change this to gray, style solid, and let's make it, yeah, we can have it 2 points actually. We can have a preview that looks more or less like we would have it. Yeah, just double click to go out of it, and we're done with the footer. So if we now preview the report, it's starting to look the way I would like to have it, but you can see the information on the right, the header and the footer. But we would like to do some changes on the specification and the item information. So, and for that I change the styles. So if we go to change styles and manage styles, we have the flag information, which is the tab information, and if we click modify on that instead, we can see that instead of having a background color, we'll clear that, and borders, instead of having a left border, we'll just say none, right border, just expand this, top, none, right, none, but bottom will have solid, but instead we could change it to a more orange color, and in this case I'll use a custom color, which is the dRofus orange. And the last thing I would like to do is to align the text on the right instead. Okay, so we get a preview up here. It's pretty much how I would like to have it. Hit OK, OK, and if we now preview, you can see that we have this style on the item and on the items, on the tabs below here. I'd just like to remove the border around the body. So again, I'll go to the change styles, manage styles, go to the din flag body, and hit modify, and we go down to the borders, left, none, right, none, and bottom, none. Okay, preview. It's starting to look like it. I'd also like to make this line below each group gray instead, because it's too dominant now. Change styles, manage styles, and go to the group header and modify, and locate the borders, bottom, and change the color to light gray. Okay, this is more like it. We can also define styles directly in the properties, and in this case I would like to set some on the entire block here to report common, because this is the one that defines some of the fonts, as you can see, and we also need to make sure that this block below here has that style. Again, if we preview, we get the correct fonts. I would also like to make some adjustments to the layout of the images, or in this case actually the block holding the images. So I'll select the block and I'll center the image, and I'll set some borders and background. I'll set the background to the dRofus gray, and I'll make it flow over the left content. I'll do that actually by applying some padding to the left, and we set the margins to be 17.78 millimeters. So I'll just set that, not the top but the left margin. And we can actually apply some top and bottom margin to have some padding here. And I'll also add some rounding on the corners on the box here, so I'll select the radius, and the top right I'll have 20 by 20 pixels, and the bottom right I'll have 20 by 20 pixels. If you preview, you can now see that the images are located in a bar below here, and I'll actually make some more space before that as well. So I'll just add one block. To create a custom cover page, I'll close the properties and I'll set view pagination. As you can see, this report up until now has been created by using one layout and applying that layout to a dynamic page set for each FF&E item. So I'll actually add a new page layout for the cover page. I'll keep this one also as A4 and have no margins. And I can also define a background image actually for this. So I'll go to background and browse for an image and have this cover page image, and make sure there's no margins for the body. Okay, and I'll add a new page set which uses this new layout. Add page set, select the page layout, my cover layout, and hit OK. And in this case I'd like to move that up before the pages. So if I just zoom a bit out, you can now see the cover page, and I'd like to insert a text field, or is a text box, and I'll move this down here to align it with the logo. And I can also, if I view the data source, I can add some information from the property sets of the report itself. For example, the project name, and I'll just shift enter and have the title of the report, or of course you could type your own stuff here, and printed by my username. So I can make these two here a bit bigger. So now I have my report. Oh, I forgot to change the font. I'll do that for these two as well. Okay, so just save it, and I can preview it as PDF, and it opens in my Adobe Reader. I'll just make it smaller to fit this recording. And as you can see, I now have a pretty nice PDF report with a cover page and the items the way I would like to have it. So I can now save it out.